The Indigenous Curatorial Collective, Collectif des Commissionnaires Autochtones, ICCA, acknowledges that we are recording this podcast on Treaty 4 territory, traditional lands of the Nehiyawak, Anishinaabeg, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and the homeland of the Métis. We are honored to have guests from all across Turtle Island, also known as North America. The ICCA is committed to advancing Indigenous arts by advocating for Indigenous-led curatorial practices, fostering critical discourse, building equitable relationships, and creating opportunities for artists and curators through collaboration, education, and community-driven engagement.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode of Indigenous Narratives in Art, where we explore the vibrant world of Indigenous arts, curatorial practices, and critical discourse. Indigenous Narratives in Art is dedicated to bringing you insightful conversations and thought-provoking content that highlights and amplifies Indigenous perspectives in the arts. We're grateful to Sarah Whalen Len, aka Ink Stitcher, for our beautiful cover art. This podcast is made possible by the generous support of Digital Strategies Cultivate Grant from Canada Council for the Arts and the Listen, Hear Our Voices program from Library and Archives Canada. Together, you help us in our mission to amplify Indigenous voices. And of course, thank you for tuning in today. Now, let's engage in today's meaningful dialogue with this episode's special guest.
Hello, and welcome to Indigenous Voices in Art, the podcast where we explore the dynamic world of Indigenous art and culture through insightful conversations with artists, curators, and cultural leaders. I'm your host, Justine Teeny Stillborn, the Digital Program and Communications Manager at the Indigenous Curatorial Collective. And today, we're diving into how we can support Indigenous contemporary art and experimental creative practices, linking the present with the past and the future. This episode underscores Ociciwan's role in fostering engagement with Indigenous culture and innovative research. So with us, I have Adrienne LaRoc from Ociciwan, and I'll let her introduce herself.
My name is Adrienne LaRoc, and I am Cree from Kisputnak, also known as the Louisville Tribe, which is one of the 4 nations in Musqueam in Treaty 6 territory. I'm a registered band member in Louisville on my dad's side of the family, and my mom's side of the family comes from the Samson Cree Nation, which is also part of Musqueam. And I grew up in my community and, moved away as an adult, kind of lived on the West Coast and then the East Coast for a little while. And all of that brought me back here to my home territory, where I'm now based in Musqueam, West Skaigan, and the director at Ociciwan.
Excellent. And what led you to Ociciwan? What was your professional background leading up to this moment like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I have a Bachelor of Arts in Native Studies through the University of Alberta. And I guess prior to entering more of an arts administrative role, I worked for a lot of Indigenous-led organizations. I worked for my community for a little while, and I was focusing. A lot of the work that I did was around the area of programming for adult learners and adult education. Post-secondary, encouraging people to go to post-secondary. And it was kind of something that I just fell into after finishing my BA. And so for a while there, I did that. But I've always been more of a creative person and an artist. I'm a beadwork artist and I sew. And so that was kind of always something that was at the back of my mind that I was interested in pursuing. After a few years of doing that, and living in Vancouver for a while, the pandemic happened. Which I think was a time where a lot of people, most everyone went through life changes. And I found myself back in Musqueam in my home community. And I was just kind of looking at, I guess, a new direction in life, and a different area to kind of focus on. And I had been aware of the Ociciwan Contemporary Art Centre for some time. I had been following them on social media. And I was just really excited by the work that they were doing. And I wanted to be involved. And they had a program coordinator position open up. And so I worked here as the program coordinator. I think in early 2022. And we worked here for a little while and really enjoyed it. And so that was kind of how like my initial how I initially became involved with the organization. I worked here as a program coordinator, and then after I decided that I wanted to go back to school. So I ended up going back to school and looking at master's programs, and I found a Master of Arts and Curatorial Practices at the University of Winnipeg. And so that was the reason why I ended up like leaving the program coordinator role, was because I became really interested in curatorial practices and like what that looked like through my work here. And then it kind of ended up moving back and ended up back here.
Thank you for sharing your journey on how you got to Ociciwan. And so, what about the organization, its values, and its mission and vision that inspired you and let you know that this was the right organization to be a part of?
Yeah, I think for me, what drew me to Ociciwan was it just always felt like a very welcoming space to be in. Every time I had come here, even when I wasn't working, so if I was coming to an exhibition or to a workshop, it just felt like a really inviting and warm space. And I think that's a part of it, kind of goes down to those values of the organization of having it, a lot of effort and intention was put into making it a safe place for everybody, for Indigenous peoples, for marginalized peoples, having a space that we could safely access for programming. All of the programming is free as well. So it removes those barriers for anyone who like wants to take a workshop on beading or wants to participate in some of these activities or see and spend time with art, right?
I love that we're talking about creating safe spaces, because I think we as Indigenous people often like are hesitant to take up space, or at least do so like without feeling a certain way about it. And so how does Ociciwan work with artists to support their creative processes and like inspire them to take up space without feeling any sort of way about it?
Yeah, I think a lot of the approach with working with artists is it's very working with artists one-on-one, starting every conversation with just like a very involved dialogue with the artist, or if it's like a workshop facilitator, about what their needs and interests are. And then also another important piece is identifying the cultural needs and protocols that they may need in this space. So I think when artists feel supported and have all of the like tools that they need, it helps them, I guess, like perhaps maybe gives them the confidence to feel like they can be in that space and take up that space. As a team, we were kind of talking about how intimidating it can be to enter into like galleries, like for like the Cube Gallery, and how it's hard for Indigenous artists to enter into those spaces for many different reasons.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And I think like the imposter syndrome too, there, even just being an artist and not being Indigenous, I hear, imposter syndrome, but being Indigenous on top of that just adds those layers of feeling like, where do I belong, So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So do you have any, I know that you're quite new in the role, almost a year, but can you share some recent exhibitions or projects that highlight Ociciwan's approach to supporting artists in their safe spaces and creating art?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to the two that I've been involved with since starting in this role. So when I started, the planning was underway for a tattoo exhibition that we had that was called Take Care. And so the planning was well underway when I started here, but I was able to be here for the installation and kind of the opening of the show. And with that show, it was co-curated by one of our core members, Haley Finney, and our program coordinator, Kiona. And so they kind of took the lead on curating the show. And Haley is also a tattoo artist and was thinking a lot about how could she bring in, like, allow these tattoo artists and artists to show like multiple practices. So I think when you think of a tattoo show, you think of, the typical like imagery that would go with a tattoo show. And what was great was that they allowed the artists to, like, there was no parameters of like it had to be visual art, it had to be this thing. And they could kind of pull from multiple practices. And it ended up being more of a drawing show, which was really interesting because each of the 4 artists' works that we had displayed here were not what you would normally see. It was more drawing based because I think that's a huge part of like a tattoo practice that we don't necessarily think about is drawing. And it just allowed the artists to kind of show this other, I guess, side of their practice, which was really nice. And so there were a lot of different ways that we were able to support them through that, giving them the space to decide which artworks that they wanted to show was a big thing. And then also, like we had Sherry Osden-Nault drew a temporary, like painted piece that was to represent like skin stitching on one of our walls. And because Sherry only had a limited amount of time, we were able to bring in an assistant artist to help with the painting of that, which was really nice. So just trying to find ways that we can support them and help them feel that it's not too overwhelming, right? Or like, how can we figure out a creative solution to do this together and like achieve like your vision?
Personally, I love like the culture around tattooing, so I wish I would have seen that show. I also have a tattooer in my family, and drawing is absolutely a huge part of tattooing. So that would have been a really amazing exhibition. And I think it kind of supports my next question. So with an exhibition like that, it's obvious that Ociciwan has some experimental and risk-taking approaches to curating. And so how does the center, or how do you support those experimental shows, or shows that kind of, I guess, push the edge of what art can be?
I think there's always a risk. Like, I think when we think of risk taking, we make we can think of it as like, oh, it's something really out there. But I think risk taking is also just showing a piece of yourself, like to someone that you don't know. And, like it's a vulnerable practice as well. Sharing art is personal. Like what we represent in art is very personal, and sharing that with public is very vulnerable. And so I think putting like for us being able to have a space where we can hopefully support the artists to be able to share those vulnerable messages and those vulnerable pieces, and then also us by supporting and advocating for the artists within that space is really important. It's just even just being kind of like the intermediaries between like the visitors to the space and the artwork, right, is kind of providing that facilitation and that lens for visitors. I think that's how we try to support. And it may not be like, I guess, what typically people think is like risk taking, but I think that's how we do it, is we just try to ensure that they're comfortable within the space.
Yeah, great answer. I think too, like that's one of it doesn't seem innovative to us, but in the non-Indigenous Western world, it is, when we're talking about making space for people to be vulnerable and establish and like building relationships with people and spaces in a way that's thoughtful, somehow feels like it's risk-taking and experimental. So I really appreciate your answer. So my next question would be, what is your approach to curating Indigenous work within a contemporary framework? So how do you ensure things aren't like stereotypical and they are still on that edge of experimental?
Mm-hmm. So the way our curatorial process runs, I guess, is that we have a core collective that oversees the curatorial vision for the center. And so each of the core members will contribute like the planning and their ideas and help with the research for each of the shows. And so for the most recent show, which opened at the beginning of this year, it's actually still installed here in the space. It's called Through Their Lens, Indigenous Perspectives in Focus. And this was curated by Alberta Rose Williams. And for her, she just really, it has 3 Alberta-based artists and their photography works. So there's 3 different series that we had showing photographic work. And basically her approach to this was, usually when we see images or photography of Indigenous people, it's kind of that like historical lens, or like capturing as if like Indigenous people don't evolve, it's like that idea that, usually Indigenous people have been photographed in the past, but not through our own like perspective and through the way we see ourselves. And so for this show, she was really looking at representing like diverse communities and exploring their relationships with the land and culture and heritage, and through a more modern perspective. And each of them have their own traditional narratives in each of the series. And it was just really nice to kind of see a more contemporary perspective. One of the series that we had as a part of this show was the Gold series, the Inuit Gold series by Cora Kaviaktak, which was very popular and brought in a lot of people. And it was just really beautiful to see, because within the series, Cora features all Inuit and Inuk women, and kind of had them like in these, I'm looking at the photos right now, like with black backgrounds and like very stunning images, and had them like covered with like gold glitter. And it was just really nice to see these women portrayed like very differently than you've ever seen them before. And so, it was just really nice to kind of bring that into like a more present day perspective.
That's great. Once I saw that exhibition, I think I got it in the newsletter. It really resonated with me as well, because we think a lot of times of when people are photographing Indigenous people, it feels very like tourism, almost like through a stereotypical lens. Yeah. So it was really refreshing exhibition, and thank you to Ociciwan for letting us also host the curatorial essay on our publications platform. That's amazing.
Yeah, Alberta was really excited about that.
Good, so are we. Yeah. And if you have any more, we're happy to take them. So my next question would be, because you're talking about what I would, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's almost like a decolonial lens when talking about that exhibition particularly. So what are the challenges in creating space for Indigenous contemporary art within dominant or colonial art systems or spaces?
I think there's many challenges. It's even just personally, right? It's there, sometimes one of the challenges is, as an Indigenous like artist or an Indigenous run center, we're often put to compete against each other for funding and for access to funding and for access to different opportunities, which can be a challenge, because we're limited to kind of like this category of being Indigenous. So that's a challenge. And I think we also, we still have to fight to have space and to be heard in kind of like the dominant art systems, which is what really great, because within our own space, we don't have to do that. We don't have to, we can just kind of start off with that base level of understanding within our own space. And, we don't have to fight against that dominant narrative as much. We still do with other factors. But I think that's something that, there's many challenges. And I think some of those are also just, I guess, so another thing that we were kind of talking about as a team, bouncing ideas around, was how even for artists, I think we also have personally a lot of commitments outside of our art practices and even our work. And so sometimes those different responsibilities, whether that's like having a family, tending to your children, or, you know, having to attend ceremony or be with your community, can get in the way of you being able to like respond to emails in time, or to be able to be as responsive and available. And so it's even just us like understanding that folks have different responsibilities, and that's okay. And just because you may have, like, you're not able to answer right away doesn't mean that you've lost the opportunity. And we still want to work with you, right?
You're actually not the first leader I've heard say that, where it's, you know, if you fail to respond and the opportunity, like, you know, we have to go to the next artist, that doesn't mean we're not going to work with you again. You know, like that, you know, yeah, we all have lives, we all have responsibilities, we're all juggling a million things and being pulled in a million different directions. And it's really reassuring to know that, you know, sometimes things happen and we have to say no this time, but that doesn't mean no forever, and that we can always work together again. So no opportunity is ever fully lost, which is really nice to hear. Because I think in like a lot of non-Indigenous organizations, you know, you miss an email and you burned a bridge for the rest of forever.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's nice to know that that's not how it actually works in the real world, or in other worlds. My next question relates to the digital publications in the digital archive projects by ICCA, which Ociciwan is a publications partner and has contributed curatorial essays to our archive. Again, thank you. My question would be, how do you document, preserve, or archive the work and conversations that emerge from your programming?
Yeah, this one is really important for us. It's kind of one of the main reasons I think that the core collective formed, was we as Indigenous, you know, centers and artists, historically, like, we have been written out of history. We have been widely unrecognized as contributors to like Canadian art history. And so it's really important for us as a center to write our own histories and lived experiences, in documenting them ourselves. So, you know, as a part of this, since we've formed, we have kept a very extensive like internal archive of everything that we've done, which is exhibitions, workshops, performances. We photograph everything. We have everything. We write reports on everything. And it's really important for us to just kind of keep all of that information organized and together. Another part that kind of helped us to have more conversations in response to the art and to the exhibitions. Last year in 2024, we received a project grant to invite dialogue between like Indigenous artists, curators, and writers. And so we were able to bring in writers to respond to some of the films that we had, some of the exhibitions that we have, or responding to the artist talks, which was really nice. Because as part of that, we were actually able to write with to work with folks who had never written before, which was really nice. So they were having a new opportunity to try something new and get a little bit creative with the written word. So that's kind of one thing that we've done recently, which has been really great, that we hope to continue. And all of those works, all of those written pieces are available. They're on our website. And so we try to make all these documentation, information, and conversations available online. So if you go online to our website, you can kind of click through and see all of our past exhibitions and information about them. And then I think, you know, in the future, like with these records that we've been keeping, we hope that like emerging curators and artists will want to do research with all of the materials that we've collected over the years. And so that's kind of the hope, is that our little library will be used.
I love that. Well, if the Indigenous Curatorial Collectives Archive can connect to your archive, I'm sure that it will help any emerging curators or students to continue that research with that library. And great work on documenting everything. Have you guys documented everything right since fruition?
I believe so. I'm pretty sure we have. Yeah, because I know we have two big binders that are full of information that go to 2015 and the core. Yeah, so yeah, we do.
Wow,
Long answer to a easy question.
well, that's amazing. And because we're kind of talking about how like the building of an archive can support a student or an emerging curator's research, is there any research in particular that plays a role in how Ociciwan supports artists or structures your exhibition?
I don't know if we actually have anything that specific. Usually with our shows, we will do like the lead curator will do a curatorial essay, which they research on the topic that they're examining. So yeah, I think that's kind of it for now in terms of our own like public research projects.
Okay, that's really cool though. So then your organization as a whole, I'm wondering, and I feel maybe I'm running right away from that research question into the long-term visions and goals of Ociciwan. What do you envision for the future of Indigenous art spaces like Ociciwan?
Yeah, I think for me, what I would really love to see is like I would love to have more Indigenous artists from across Turtle Island to share their work with us and with like the public of like Amaskwaci Waskagan, also known as Edmonton. And I think for me personally, part of what I was really excited about coming to this organization was just also being able to open us up to more people. I think, you know, as somebody who has been a champion of this center since it started and has been a fan of all of the different work that we've done here, even prior to me being involved, I've always just wanted people to know about the space and to know that we exist and to know that we're willing to collaborate and work together. I guess I just want more people to be able to know and engage with Indigenous art and just to be able to provide more opportunities for Indigenous artists. And hopefully, you know, one of the areas that we can kind of even expand on within our own programming is diving deeper into new media, which is really exciting. I think there's a lot of really great work there. And, you know, with our media center that we have, or sorry, our media room that we have here, we've really only kind of tapped the surface of what that could be used for. So I feel like I kind of went on a tangent on that.
No, that's perfect. That's great. I love the idea of a new media center. I know one of the founders of the Indigenous Curatorial Collective, because it used to be called the Aboriginal Curatorial Collective, was a Hasu, and they did a lot of like web-based and new media artworks back in the 90s. So I feel like that's really exciting that Ociciwan, and I think that really speaks again to the experimental and risk taking is having new media and exploring in, I would say, a medium that isn't really done a whole lot with, that Indigenous people can really be on the forefront of what that medium can do. And so that's really exciting for me. Yeah, that's great. Also, I wanted to say too, I feel like having more opportunities for Indigenous people is something that is a vision that aligns with ICCA and by organizations like yours and mine and all the other Indigenous artist-run centers, artist collectives, what have you. I think by us coming together and working together and collaborating, we can stop fighting over that grant money and do really incredible things. We're almost out of time. And so I wanted to open up the floor and say, is there anything that you didn't get a chance to talk about that you were really excited to?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I didn't have an opportunity to mention yet was to talk about our garden space. I think I
I
think,
love gardens.
yeah, I think most folks, especially those that are based in Edmonton, kind of know us for our butterfly garden, the Kamema garden, which we have been programming now. We're going into our 5th year of programming the space. And so it's a butterfly garden inspired by the work of the late Mi'kmaq artist Mike McDonald. And it first started in partnership with Finding Flowers. So that first year was a collaboration. And then since then, we have planted every year now and going in for our 5th year. And so what's really great about this space is it's outside of our building, just a couple steps away from our center. And it's a public garden that's open 24/7 year round. And we plant pollinator plants. And each year we kind of add more things. So, since the first iteration, we've now since added like sweetgrass and tobacco plants. Last year, because community members were asking for more for asking for plant foods, we planted some strawberries. So that was really nice. We don't have the capacity to have it be like a vegetable garden just because requires more work for our small team, but it is a really well-loved space. And what's great about it is we run workshops out there, weather permitting. So usually from the spring to the fall season, we've had storytelling events, film events, musical performances, and it's a really well-loved space. That's, I think, because it's outside, it's just like available for anybody to come. So it's one of the places that we feel is really well loved in the community. And yeah, we're getting excited. We're just getting ready to plant in a couple weeks here. So gearing up for our next garden season.
Wow, that's really amazing. I didn't know you guys had a garden. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I want to I'm going to interject my own excited rant here. I think that gardening is one of the most like punk, decolonial, anti-capitalist things you can do. And so having like a public space where people can just come in, eat a strawberry, watch some insects, that's fabulous. Wow, great work.
Thank you.
That's
yeah.
so cool. Well, that's really cool. Well, it was lovely to sit and get to know you, Adrienne, and to hear about the amazing things that Ociciwan is doing. Is there any final thoughts you have before we wrap up?
No, I think that was really a great conversation. Thank you so much for thinking of us and for including Ociciwan in this conversation. Hopefully we can do it again in the future.
Thank you. And yeah, we definitely will. As one of our publications partners, we do an annual roundtable. But because we're doing a podcast, I'm thinking that the next roundtable will be recorded and part of the podcast, maybe episode number 4. Yeah. So yeah, I hope to connect with you regarding that. And I hope that this is just the start of more awesome things.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thanks again for joining us. And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Indigenous Narratives in Art. This concludes our episode. We hope you enjoyed our conversation and gained new insights into the vibrant world of Indigenous arts and culture. This podcast is made possible by the generous support of Digital Strategies Cultivate Grant from Canada Council for the Arts and the Listen, Hear Our Voices program from Library and Archives Canada. Thank you, both of you, again, for helping us amplify Indigenous voices. You can amplify your own artistic narratives by contributing your voice to our publications platform and our archive. Visit our website at icca.art to learn more about our programs such as annual gatherings, delegations initiative, and publications, and projects like Community Cares, our curatorial mentorship program, Activations of Solidarity, and more. Don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Vimeo to stay updated on our latest episodes and initiatives. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to sharing more with you next time.